This week we will be covering section 8.3 and 8.4. So one of the first things that we'll be looking at is the inverse of a matrix. And so in order to show that two matrices are inverses of each other, we need to be able to multiply A times B, and that should equal the identity matrix. But we should also be able to multiply B times A, and that should also give us the identity matrix. So the identity matrix is the matrix that has ones in the diagonal and 0 everywhere else. So this is the 2 by 2 identity matrix. Okay, so first we're going to multiply A times B, and that's going to be equal to some matrix. So first we're going to take the first row with the first column, and we're going to multiply the first number times the first number. So that's going to be 2 times 3 plus the second number times the second number, which is 1 times -5. And whatever number we get, we're going to place it into our first element in the first row, first column. So 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times -5 is -5. So 6 plus -5 gives me a 1. And then we go on to the next row, still using the next column, using the same row. So we're going to take the number 2 times -1 plus 1 times 2. So 2 times -1 is -2, and 1 times 2 is 2. So -2 plus 2 is going to give me 0. Next, we go ahead and start with the next row. So we're going to take this second row times the first column. So it's going to be 5 times 3 plus 3 times -5. So if we add this, we get 5 times 3 is 15 plus a -15 gives me a 0. Then we go on to the next one. So we have 5 times -1 plus 3 times 2. So we can see here that we get -5 plus 6 is going to be equal to 1. So as you can see, when we multiply A times B, we get the identity matrix 1, 0, 0, 1. However, we still need to make sure that if we reverse the two matrices, that we're still going to end up with the identity matrix. So we have the first row times the first column. 3 times 2 is 6. And -1 times 5 is -5. So 6 plus -5 is 1. 3 times 1 is 3. -1 times 3 is -3. So if we add, we get a 0. Now we go to the second row. -5 times 2 is -10. 2 times 5 is +10. We add that, we get 0. And -5 times 1 is -5. And 2 times 3 is 6. So if we add that, we get a 1. So you can see that we get the identity matrix for both situations. And so we say that B is the inverse of the matrix A. So when you're putting this in WebAssign, they are going to ask you to enter the multiplication. And so here, we're multiplying the 2 times the 3. That's the 6 that they get here. And then we're multiplying 1 times -5. And so we're going to put here 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. So we would enter it here. And then 6 plus negative 5 is your 1. So that's going to go on this side. Okay, so then if we go to the next row, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 1 times 2 is positive 2. So negative 2 plus 2 is going to be your 0. So you would enter it there. And then the second row is 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times negative 15 is negative 15. So 15 plus negative 15 is 0. And then we go 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. 2 is 6. And negative 5 plus 6 is 1. And so you'll be asked to enter the multiplication part. So we want to find the inverse of a matrix. And so in order to find the inverse of the matrix, there are 3 different ways that you can do this. Actually, in fact, there's 4 different ways. The first way is to attach the identity matrix and then do row operations so that you end up with the identity matrix on the left side, and whatever you have on the right side will be your inverse. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to use the formula, and the formula only works for a 2 by 2. Okay, and then the third way is to use a system of equations. Okay, so right now I will be using the formula. However, if you would like to see this example or the third way example, I will provide a video for you. Okay, so if you would like to see method 1, so this is method 1, or method 2, then you can go to this YouTube video. For these examples, I'll be using method 3. Okay, so to find the inverse using method 3, which is the formula, so let's say we have a matrix and the elements are A, B, C, D, then the inverse can be found by multiplying A times D and B times C and subtracting them. Then we're going to switch the D and the A and switch the signs for B and C. So in this example, if we want to find the inverse, we would have 1 divided by A times D. Remember, this is A, B, C, and D. So this would be 2 times 3 minus B times C. And then we're going to switch the A and the D and switch the signs for B and C. So since B is positive and C is positive, we made them negative. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 5 is 5. And 6 minus 5 is 1. So 1 times the matrix here is just going to tell us that our inverse is 3, negative 1, negative 5, and 2. You're entering this into WebAssign. If you need to add more rows or columns, then you can press these arrows here, or you can also delete rows and columns by pressing the arrows. And so then you would just enter your answer. Another way you can do this is to use a calculator. And so if you have a graphing calculator, then the way you would enter it in the calculator is as follows. So you'll press second matrix. I'm going to edit a matrix, and this is a 2 by 2. Enter the values. Then I'm going to second quit, and then I'm going to call the matrix. So I put it in A, and I'm going to use this symbol right here for the inverse. And then you can see our inverse 3, -1, -5, and 2. If you don't have a graphing calculator, you can go to decimals.com. So if you don't have a calculator, you can use the decimals.com matrix calculator. Okay, so you would click on new matrix and we're going to enter our values. So our values are 2, 1, 5, and 3. And so when we're ready to do some work, we click the arrow down here on the right. And we want to use our matrix A and then our symbol for inverse. And then we can press enter. So you can see our inverse is 3, -1, -5, and 2. And that is what we got here. Okay, so for number 3, we can use the calculator as well, or we can also use, I'm going to go ahead and use the first method. So I'm going to attach this identity matrix to it. And we want the first row to be a 1 in the first position. And then I'm going to multiply the first row by a -2. And then I'm going to add it to row 2. So -2 times 1 is -2, plus 2 is 0. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 4 is +2. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 3 is 1. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 0 is -2. -2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. -2 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom row. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 2 is 0. -2 times 1 plus 5 is going to be 3. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 4 is +2. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 0 is -2. -2 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. And -2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to make this number be a 1. So I'm not going to change the first row, and I'm not changing the third row at this point. So I only want to change that middle row, so I'm going to multiply by a half. 1/2 times 0 is 0. 1/2 times 2 is 1. 1/2 times 1 is a half. 1/2 times -2 is -1. 1/2 times 1 is a half. And 1/2 times 0 is 0. So for the next one, I do not want to change the second row, but I am going to multiply this row by -1 and then add it here. So -1 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. -1 times 1 is -1, plus 1 is 0. -1 times a half plus 1 is a half. -1 times -1 is +1, plus 1 is a 2. -1 times a half is -a half, plus 0 is -a half. -1 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. And then I want to get rid of this 3. So I'm going to multiply by -3 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. -3 times 1 is -3, plus 3 is 0. -3 times a half is -3 halves, plus 2. So that's going to give us a half. And -3 times -1 is +3, plus a -2 is 1. -3 times a half is -3 halves, plus 0 is -3 halves. -3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. The next thing is we want to have a 1 down here. So I'm going to multiply this by 2. But I'm not going to change the first row, And I'm not changing the second row. So the third row, 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times a half is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times negative 3 halves is negative 3. 2 times 1 is 2. So next, I want to make these halves, I want to make these 0. Multiply this by a negative a half, and then add it to the row. So we do not want to change the last row. And then I'm going to have 1 half times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. Negative a half times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Negative a half times 1 plus a positive a half is 0. Negative a half times 2 is negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. Negative a half times negative 3 is positive 3 halves, plus a half is 4 over 2, which is 2. And negative a half times 2 is negative 1 plus 0 is negative 1. Times negative a half times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Negative a half times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. Negative a half times 1 plus a half is 0. Negative a half times 2 is negative 1. And negative half times negative 3 halves is positive 3 halves, plus a negative a half is 2 over 2, which is going to be 1. And negative a half times 2 is a negative 1 plus 0, negative 1. So my inverse is 1, 1, negative 1, negative 2, 2, 1, and 2, negative 3, and 2. So if we want to put this in the calculator, I'm going to press edit. So this is a 3 by 3. The numbers are 1, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 5, and 4. Second quit. Call the matrix. And so we get 1, 1, negative 1, negative 2, 2, 1, 2, negative 3, and 2. Use the calculator, or you can use the process that I used here. Okay, so let's look at example 4. System of linear equations using inverses. So for this, we need to know what our matrix A is, which is going to be all the coefficients. So for x, we have a 1. For y, we have a negative 5. Then we have 5 and negative 24. We're going to need our constants, which are 2 and 10. So we can call that B. And then our variable matrix is find A inverse. So A times D here is 1 times negative 24 minus B times C. And we're going to switch A and D. And we're going to change the signs for B and C. So since B is negative 5, it's going to be a positive 5. And then we have a negative 5 for C. So we end up with 1 divided by negative 24. Negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Times a negative 1 is positive 25. So A inverse is equal to 1 divided by 1. Okay, so my A inverse here is negative 24, 5, negative 5, and 1. So to get our answer, so X is going to be equal to A inverse times B. So A inverse, we just found out, is negative 24, 5, negative 5, and 1 times B, which is 2 and 10. So we're multiplying these matrices together. So negative 24 times 2 is negative 48. 5 times 10 is 50. So negative 48 plus 50 is 2. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Plus 10 is 0. So here, my answer, remember x here was xy is equal to 2 and 0. So x is 0 and x is 2 and y is 0. So my solution is 2, 0. Okay, so then example 5, use the inverse matrix to solve the system. So here they already give us the inverse, so all we have to do is set up our matrices here. So we have x, y, and z. So our B is 0, 7, 5, and our A inverse is 1, 1, negative 1, negative 5, 2, negative 1, 5, negative 3, and 2. So our answer is going to be A inverse times B. So A inverse, so we have 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 7 is 7, negative 1 times 5 is negative 5, plus a 7 gives me a 2, negative 5 times 0 is 0, 2 times 7 is 14, plus a negative 5 is 9. 5 times 0 is 0, negative 3 times 7 is negative 21, plus 10 is negative 11. My solution is 2, 9, negative 11. Okay, so the next examples are from section 8.4. So find the determinant. To find the determinant of this matrix, we write it as 7, 2, 3, and 5. Notice I'm using vertical lines here. And our answer is going to be 7 times 5 minus 2 times 3. And so that's going to give us 35 minus 6 is 29. Okay, so for letter B, we want to find the determinant. So I'm going to write it with vertical lines. So this is going to be 8 times negative 5 minus negative 8 times 3. So we end up with negative 40. Negative negative is positive 24. And so that's going to give me a negative 16. And so for the next one, when you see this symbol, it means to find the determinant of A. So here we're multiplying 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 4 times 0 is 0. So my answer would be negative 6. And then for B, we get negative 1 times 4 is negative 4 minus 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. So we get 0. Negative negative is positive. Then they want us to multiply A times B. So here's A and here's B. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 0 times negative 4 is 0. So we get negative 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 0 times 4 is 0. So we end up with 2. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. 3 times negative 4 is positive 12, so 12 plus negative 4 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. 4 minus 12 is negative 8. Then they want us to do the determinant of our product. So we have negative 2 times negative 8, positive 16, minus 8 times 2, 16, so we get 0. Now you can use the calculator to find the determinant as well. So all you would do is enter the matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. So you would press math, and then it's the first one. And then it will give you your answer. If you don't have that, you can use the calculator. So we can use the same matrix A. So here you will put determinant of A, enter, and then you would get your answer. So for these here, you could use the calculator, or we can do it by hand. I'm going to enter this into the calculator. So we have 3, 0, 0. Press math. First one, negative 18. So my determinant, negative 18. And we have negative 5, 0, 0, and 4. So we end up with negative 120.